Burlesque by Kamari333. Chapter 17. Intervention. Lus slowly awoke the next morning, snuggling closer to the steady thrum of another monster's magic, familiar and accepting. Looking up into Dance's face, still slack and unguarded as he slept peacefully, Lust wondered how he ever managed to get through the day without waking up to something like this. He grinned, bringing his hand up to wipe away a bit of sweat from Dance's brow, letting it linger there as he followed the curvature of his orbits with his thumb, down and around so he could cradle the hinge of his jaw carefully with the tips of his distal phalanges. Lust found himself leaning, only remembering to stop himself just in time, less than an inch from making contact with his teeth. Dance was asleep. He was having a nice dream, and Lust shouldn't intrude on that just to kiss him. Dating or not, Dance did not give him permission to kiss him while he was asleep and vulnerable and adorable, and kissing would lead to other things that were even more unacceptable. Lust quickly hid his face in Dance's shoulder, suppressing a groan. He was just greedy. He could wait for Dance to wake up on his own. He could wait. It wasn't going to kill him to show a little patience. But maybe a distraction would help. Lust racked his brain for something to occupy his time, quietly, so as not to disturb Dance. He should probably go look to see if there was anything worth eating in the kitchen. Yeah, the kitchen, where he wouldn't be as tempted to jump his helpless, trusting boyfriend like the vicious predator he was. Stars only know it's been months since Lust actually went shopping. Why bother when Red was just going to bring him food every night? Plan in mind, Lust began the delicate operation of escaping the arms that surrounded him. His plan crumbled when he felt Dance tighten his hold, pulling him closer and making a snuffling noise as he buried his face in Lust's shoulder, hiding in the thin t-shirt he'd thrown on last night for comfort. Lust sighed, hugging Dance back and lazily stroking over the smooth planes of his skull, thumbing idly over an off disturbance in the bone towards the top, where it looked like it had been filed away and flattened slightly. Lust found himself making little circles on the anomalous spot with his thumb, racking his brain for what could possibly have caused it. It was almost like Dance had spent a significant amount of time standing on his head, although that wasn't quite right either. The slight grain in the mark was curved. Had he been spinning? Lust's thoughts were interrupted when Dance responded to the attention with a delicious noise, breathy and pleased. Lust couldn't help the snicker that bubbled in his ribcage. He made sure not to stop petting Dance's head as he thought of another plan. It was then that Lust remembered the book. Lust looked over to the crumpled heap on his floor where his vest was from last night. Cheating with a bit of blue magic, Lust coaxed the thing over to the bed and stuck his hand in the pocket, pulling out his ignored phone. He flipped it open and retrieved the gift he had gotten from Boss. That book that Red had gotten so defensive about. Lust flipped the book open to the first chapter. Chapter 1. What is personal ecological territory? Personal ecological territory is defined as any organic matter which is under your supervision or dependent upon you. For example, children are much more likely to survive to adulthood if they are the personal ecological territory of a strong monster, simply because fewer individuals will be foolish enough to risk retribution for such low reward, excluding abnormal socio-emotional drivers or simple ignorance. However, given the social climate of the underground, the need to define personal ecological territory explicitly has never been more important or relevant to everyday life. See Chapter 2. Lust read through a few more pages, finding the book read much like a dissertation on social behavior. If he hadn't had to read and write such papers himself at one point, he might have found the book unbearably dry and unpalatable. However, the way certain phrases were framed, the way the author danced around certain topics as though expecting it to be common knowledge, the underlying tone did not paint the nicest picture of the society that the book was written for. Red society. On the bright side, the cerebral horror of it all was perfect to kill Lust's libido. Clinging to Dance with his one arm, like a child clinging to a stuffed animal as they watched a scary movie, Lust pushed through the uncomfortable passages that set the stage for the what and the why, until he got to the how, which was much more interesting and significantly less distressing. The chapter that especially caught his attention was the one about courtship and mating protocol, and it was only then, when so much of Red's behavior was given context, that Lust realized it was an acronym. Lust found himself touching the collar around his neck, feeling that different kind of warmth fill him from his core outward, before setting the book aside and cuddling Dance, wishing he could cuddle up to Red at that moment as well. The next few weeks were largely the same as before, to Dance's unspeakable irritation. Red continued to avoid him. Dance couldn't keep spending every night at Lust's place. His brother had already expressed his concern about Dance staying out every night. Dance's obsession with a certain flavor only grew. Dance tried not to let it bother him. He did. He really did. But every time he came over to Lust for movies and saw that side of the couch empty, something coiled, tight and painful in his core, making the joints in his neck burn with false bile. He hated it. This was only further proof that Red was an asshole, but now Red didn't even have the spine to show up and be told off to his face. Worse yet, Dance could tell that Lust didn't like the avoidance either. Every time Lust noticed Dance glance at the far end of the couch, he looked like he wanted to say something. He always thought better of it at the last second, instead snuggling closer and distracting Dance with something, usually a kiss. Stars, could Lust kiss? He was so good at it he didn't even need lips, so he would forget about it. Now, Dance always considered himself a patient monster. If Red just kept avoiding him, he really didn't have a reason to complain. It was almost 3 weeks later, the night that Red didn't come to see Lust, that finally made him snap. Dance shortcut into Lust's apartment, nibbling on a chunk of watermelon he'd swiped from his stash in the fridge back home, the most recent escalation in his strange obsession. Lust was pacing, hugging himself, his phone clenched in one hand. Babe? Dance tried, hoping to get Lust's attention. Lust had snapped up, and Dance made a point of not feeling offended when he caught that flicker of disappointment right before Lust's tired attempt at a smile. Hey. Closing the distance between them, Dance pulled Lust into his arms, hooking his chin over Lust's shoulder. The feathers of the fringe on his vest tickled the underside of his jaw. Wanna talk about it? At first, Lust tensed, hesitating. Dance waited, uncertain what the issue actually was, hoping that Lust would confide in him on his own. Dance's patience was rewarded when Lust let out a dry laugh, returning the comforting embrace with a desperate one. Red didn't show up the last few days, and he won't answer his phone. He sucked in a shaky breath. I'm probably overreacting. It's only been 3 days. He's probably fine, just bored of me or busy. Had this been a few months ago, Dance would have been scrambling to reassure Lust to say, hey, he's probably out drinking or stealing purses. But it wasn't. It was now. Now, when Dance had a persistent craving for watermelon anything, and he knew damn well Red put Lust before everything else, short of maybe his brother, although Dance wasn't about to say he had any kind of understanding about their relationship. Dance instead found himself hugging Lust tighter, his own concern, which of course would come part and par with his stupid fucking crush, blazing to life. On the one hand, Red was a hulking beast of a monster with plenty of LV capable of protecting himself. On the other hand, he'd been beaten and broken before. And there were humans out there. Dance swallowed down the burning feeling that clung to his vertebra. Does his phone ring when you call it or go straight to voicemail? It rings? Lust answered, confusion evident in his voice. Dance nodded, pulling away. Okay, then if the asshole won't come to us, we will go to the asshole. How? Lust asked, clutching at his collar. We don't know where he is. Dance pulled out his phone, pulling up an app he'd made years ago but never used, because if he were being honest, it was kind of stalker territory, and as soon as he had tested it, he'd felt a bit off and stuffed it in the hidden folder. Now though, just this once, he thought its use was justified. What's Red's number? Lust gave it to him, and Dance plugged it into the app. After some buffering and a good bit of data usage, Dance was glad he had an unlimited plan, or this thing would have likely gotten him overcharged. The pixelated little map of Ebbet pulled up, and 2 little blinking dots appeared on the screen. One was Dance's current location, within about 30 feet, and the other was, assuming he had his phone, red. Lust looked over Dance's shoulder. It's kinda creepy that you can do that. Yeah, that's why I never sold the app. Just too much responsibility, Dance admitted, heading for the door. Lust followed after, apparently not above a little creeping if it meant making sure Red was alright. Dance and Lust went into the nearby alley to shortcut a bit closer to Red's supposed location, but neither one of them had been to that side of town before, so even the nearest they could get still meant they had a bit of a walk ahead of them. As they headed further in the right direction, Dance grew more and more nervous. This side of town was crawling with sources of LV. There weren't many other pedestrians, but the ones he saw were teeming with it, the chill wafting off them thickly. Dance found himself pulling Lust closer to his side, holding tightly to his hip with his free hand, ready to shortcut away at a moment's notice. Lust didn't show the slightest bit of unease, or at the very least no more than he had in the apartment. He was still obviously distraught over Red's sudden cut in contact. He kept toying with the collar, finding some kind of relief from it. Dance assumed, as long as the magic in it stayed strong, it was a good sign Red wasn't, "Nope, not gonna go there, not gonna think that, nope, nuh-uh." Dance shook his head, turning the corner and working his way ever closer to the only clue they had to Red's whereabouts. When they finally reached the same general area of Red's phone, Dance didn't need much prompting to figure out which building he was probably in. There, on the corner, was a large sign with flashing neon lights, declaring the location of Grillby's bar and casino. Dance quit the app, flipped his phone shut, and stalked in. He was livid. How dare Red cut off all contact with Lust just to gamble? Did he have any idea how worried Lust was? What the hell kind of irresponsible bastard did that to someone who cared about him? Dance ground his teeth as he hunted for the telltale sign of black and crimson. The issue being that seemed to be the favorite color scheme of nearly everyone in the room. It took Dance a hot minute to find anyone who wasn't dressed like they just raided a hot topic. When he did find someone, it was a bright orange hoodie seated in the back, one of the few monsters not dripping in violence. Dance wove his way through the crowd. He was halfway across the room when he felt himself pulled up short, or, more specifically, he felt Lust held up short. Dance turned to see it was Red, in a suit. Red was in smart black suit pants, a button-down white collar shirt, and a black waiter's vest, along with a black apron hanging around his waist and padded white gloves which buffered his claws from scratching the tray of drinks balanced on one arm. The strangest part of the whole ensemble was that, for the first time Dance had ever seen him, his red collar wasn't around his neck, instead cinched tight around his upper arm, while around his neck now sat a matching black bow tie. Red had Lust's collar gripped in his other hand, which had been what halted their progress. "The fuck are you two doing here?" he hissed, keeping his voice low as if he were trying not to be overheard. "I could ask you the same. You didn't answer your phone. I was really starting to worry." Lust tried to explain, bringing his hand up to cling to Red's, as if to keep it there at his throat. Red made a throaty rumble. "Haven't exactly had my phone for a bit. Flamin' assholes had it as collateral." "Collateral?" Lust asked, the tension bleeding out of him gradually. "I'll explain later," Red hissed. "The two of you get the fuck out of here before you get in Red was interrupted by the call of his name from the far-off table. Red bristled, turning to shout, "Keep your shirts on, I'm coming!" Dance watched dumbfounded as Red waded through the crowd before coming to the table and delivering the drinks. He hovered there for a bit before darting off for the kitchen. "Dear stars, he cleans up nice," Lust breathed, grabbing at his collar as he stared after Red's retreated form, hearts throbbing in his sockets. "Uh-huh," Dance agreed, stupidly, because it didn't matter. He was an asshole. It didn't matter how well he wore a suit. He shook himself. "Let's get out of here. He's fine. He'll explain later." Lust squeezed Dance's shoulder. I'm gonna stay. At least this way I can see him. Besides," he smirked at Dance, blushing faintly, "he's in a suit. When's the next time I'm gonna get to see that?" Dance really couldn't argue with him there, and didn't that just say something? That his traitorous brain couldn't come up with a single reason to trump seeing that fucking asshole in something resembling formal wear, when he knows damn well he could have written a book with 3 sequels about all the reasons why that didn't matter not 3 months ago. Dance made a noise of discontent. He didn't really want to stay. It felt wrong being here. The air was filled with the chill of LV, and Dance wanted nothing more than to grab the both of them and shortcut back home. But Lust was going to stay either way. Dance wasn't about to let Lust stay here alone. He pulled Lust closer to him, using his boyfriend's body heat to help calm his twitchy nerves. Lust ended up leading him further into the building, away from the casino, more toward the restaurant portion. They were just passing by the table with the single spot of bright color in the room when Red came out from the kitchen, heading straight towards them with 2 servings of what looked like cake. Red shot them both looks, an expression that might have sent a chill through Dance's spine before, but now only made him irritated as he approached the table with the orange hoodie and set the cake down. "There, now quit your bitching, you damn addicts." "Hey, that's no way to treat your customers." The second monster, another one dripping in LV, lithe like a jaguar and just as agile, teased, slinging his arm around the one in the orange hoodie. "Yeah, you're supposed to say, 'Thank you for being the best part of Grillby's. Is there anything else I can do for you?' And then we'll say, 'Why, yes, there is. We need mood music.'" The orange hoodie said, his playful smirk only spreading wider. "You can't be fucking serious." Red growled at them. "I got other fucking customers to serve. What the fuck you want me to do? Pull out a violin and play some fucking Mozart?" "Metallica, actually." The other monster chimed in, grinning. "Ain't in my job description. You want music? Go fix the speakers yourself." Red hissed. "You are way more fun when you're high," the orange hoodie observed. Red flipped him off before turning on Lust and Dance. "Didn't I tell the 2 of you to scram?" Lust just smiled at Red. "Actually, I was thinking about sitting down, having a drink." I think you're in the wrong bar," Orange Hoodie cut in. "The hooker's dive is down the street." Dance felt his core freeze, his magic run cold. At his side, Lust froze for the briefest moment, flinching, before his easy smile returned to his face. Did he just say what Dance thought he said? He could not have just said what he thought he said. No. He must have heard wrong. "You would know, wouldn't you, honey?" the other monster teased, getting a playful shove for his trouble. "Not hard to spot a hooker, dude," the orange hoodie pointed out. He did. He said exactly what Dance thought he said. Dance was suddenly 2 feet in the air, fist outstretched and inches from cracking that smug grin clean in half. The orange hoodie didn't flinch, although he looked rather surprised. The monster with LV was on his feet in an instant, pulling the one in the orange hoodie into his lap, away from Dance's fist, and summoning a bone construct, simple but sharp, shimmering a burnt sienna in the dim light. His right eyelight was pulsing a bright orange and gold, flickering violently. Dance could taste the LV in the air, the violent intent. But there was a wall there, between the other monster and himself. He could still feel the cold of LV, but it was a different kind of chill. Instead of being buffeted by the howling wind of violent intent, it was like he could hear it roaring from inside a shelter, like he had hunkered down in an igloo to weather the storm. Red's LV was holding the others at bay, a wall of ice to keep them warm. Red's deep rumble broke through the surprising silence. "Slim, buddy, pal. Better teach your pet some fucking manners," he said, though the way he spat the word, it sounded nothing like it did when he used it to refer to Lust. "Else you ain't gonna like what happens next." The other monster, Slim, scoffed. "Ain't afraid of free XP. Besides, you caught him already." Red grinned wider, but there was no mirth to it. "Nah, see, I ain't talking about what Dance here was gonna do. See, what Dance here was gonna do was knock a few teeth out. No real loss. Might even be able to reattach them if you're fast enough. Quick, painless, merciful. Especially considering the crime. But me?" Red leaned closer to them, bracing his other hand on the table as he kept holding Dance back by the scruff of his hoodie. "Bitch, I know where you fuckers live. What you think I'ma do to you for what you just said about my pet? Dance saw realization strike Slim, who looked over at Lust again. He started to sweat. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Red growled. Anyone else in this fucking dive said that shit, I'd have dusted him by now, Grillby or no. Now get the fuck out of here before I do something real stupid. Sorry, Slim muttered as he started to pull the orange hoodie out and away with him. Orange Hoodie swiped up the cake servings, keeping a hold of them as he was dragged off. He looked over his shoulder, still confused and not the least bit repentant, right up until he disappeared into the crowd. Red waited, for what Dance wasn't certain, then let go of Dance and backed up. Sorry, ain't really allowed to fight in here. Couldn't let you land a hit. Dance found he could still feel the chill from the wall Red had erected. It was the same chill he usually felt around Red. The implications weren't lost on him. Dance? Lust murmured, putting his hands on Dance's shoulders. Sweetie, calm down. It's okay. Dance took a deep breath. It is not okay, but... He rubbed his face, leaning into Lust. He'd lost his temper again. He'd lost his temper in front of Lust again. Sorry. Dance took deep, calming breaths, listening to Lust reassure him all was well, as Red stood indomitable between them and the crowded casino. Red nearly had a panic attack when he realized through his marrow-deep exhaustion that he was not imagining Lust being closer. Adrenaline and fear woke him up like a splash of cold water, and he was on them in seconds, easily pulling them out of the crowd to try and convince them to leave. Grillby wasn't here to keep the peace. Red was too busy to keep an eye on them all night. There was booze, which meant drunks, and gambling, which meant angry drunks. This was not a place for free XP. Red should have figured Lust would start to worry after his phone got confiscated, but Red hadn't really had a chance to think about it with all the running about he'd been doing. Damn Elemental was too cheap to hire actual help, so when he'd left, Red had been stuck tending to the whole establishment single-handedly. Stretch and Slim kept the work from growing too dull, even if they did only come to tease him about the uniform and the fact he was actually working. He couldn't blame them for it. He'd tease the shit out of either of them if their roles were reversed. What he couldn't abide was the blatant disrespect towards Lust. Stretch opened his big fucking mouth, and Red nearly shoved his whole damn fist into it. Dance would have if Red hadn't caught him fast enough, and holy shit was Dance fast when he wanted to be. That lunge had been a fucking work of art, graceful and powerful, and fuck, he needed to stop thinking about it. Slim needed to give Stretch the talk already. At least Red had explained to Lust what a collar meant. What surprised Red was how Dance had responded. Sure, Red had instinctually desired to rip his friends to little pieces and play Yahtzee with their shattered remains, but he had LV. That was kind of the deal. Dance didn't have a lick of it. Red decided to file that away for another day, and instead focus on getting Lust and Dance seated near the kitchen so he could keep a little bit of an eye on them. Are you alright, sweetheart? Red rumbled, helping Lust into his seat. I'm fine, Lust assured him, completely at ease despite everything. You guys didn't have to respond like that, you know. It wasn't a big deal. It was a very big deal, Red insisted. Only one was allowed to talk dirty to you is me, remember? Lust smiled even wider, reaching up the toy with Red's stupid bow tie, which was suddenly a little less stupid and a little more acceptable, now that Lust was playing with it. You know, you clean up real nice, sweetie. This is a good look for you. Red hoped the heat flooding to his face wasn't doing anything noticeable. Yeah? He'd figured the monkey suit had been just another way for Grillby to assert his control and dominance, as well as to indicate to the customers Red had been purposefully left in control for the last few days. He hadn't considered any of it pleasant or even beneficial to his image. If anything, it implied subservience to Grillby, which, in this case, wasn't entirely a lie, but certainly wasn't Red's goal. You gonna explain all this? Dance finally asked, like Red knew he would, eventually, when his distaste for Red was finally overcome by his curiosity. Red opened his mouth to start, but heard the call of another patron. Shit, look, I'll swing by later. Red darted off before they could try and pin him again, catching their request for refills by 2 humans and Doggo, who thought it was hilarious that he was actually doing work and moving around. Red didn't get a chance to check back with Lust and Dance until his next legally mandated break. Red pulled up a spare chair and eased into it, groaning softly as he did, and the weight of his bones was finally taken off his feet. "Red, baby, you're exhausted," Lust worried, reaching out to stroke his skull, wiping away some of the sweat that had built up there. "What else is new?" Red grumbled. "Since when do you work at a casino?" Dance demanded to know, arms crossed, posture defensive, as if Red's working here was somehow offensive to him. Perhaps it was. Hell if Red knew. He couldn't figure the guy out to save his life. "Few days ago. Just picked up the shifts while Grillbs is on vacation," Red muttered, taking this opportunity to breathe easy. "How does that translate to you not having your phone?" Lust asked, perfectly reasonably. Red ground his teeth. He didn't want to tell them about how his skeezy apartment upped its rent and he needed the money. He didn't want to bitch them about how hard it was to find decent work after that new law was passed about having to report your LV on job applications. He certainly didn't want to admit that he'd ended up losing his phone while trying to gamble himself up rent money. He could already imagine how that would go, the look of horror on Lust's face slowly shifting to contempt, Dance's micro-expressions vividly proclaiming his victory and ridicule. Some provider Red was, couldn't even provide for himself. Red was lucky Grillby had bought the damn thing back in return for Red running the bar while he takes a vacation. Red hadn't gone into teaching for the money, but it sure as fuck wouldn't hurt to have a fallback plan that didn't involve cheating at cards. Or at least a summer job. "Ain't allowed to have the phone while I'm clocked in," was all he said. "When do you clock out?" Lust asked. Red shrugged. "Whenever Grillbs gets back. In the meantime, I gotta run the place, and that means he gets to lock my phone up in the safe." "You mean you've been working this place non-stop for 3 days?" Lust exclaimed, also reasonably alarmed. Red shrugged again. He didn't have a better way to say it. "There's this nice 6-hour break between closing and opening, but I can't damn well leave the bar for it, so I've been sleeping in the back." "That can't be legal," Dance growled, irritable. Red shrugged again. "I agreed to it." "And doesn't that speak volumes about your situation?" A soft, low crackle came from behind Red. Red looked behind him, careful not to jump from surprise. That sneaky fireball would like that too much, damn him. There was Grillby, looking over his sunglasses at the three of them with knowing, disappointed eyelights. "Didn't expect you back so soon, Tiki Torch," Red quipped. "Get bored of sunbathing?" "Oh, please." Grillby's flames crackled with attitude. "My vacation was spent in bed, watching TV and eating coal." "Still trying to shit diamonds, huh?" Red snickered. "No, I just got hungry, waiting for someone to show up for you." Grillby huffed, arms crossed. "I expected papyrus. You never told me you had pets." Red raised a bone brow, standing up. "Show up for me? Fuck?" "It is called an intervention. Now." Grillby turned to Lust and Dance. "Get this idiot a summer job, and get him out of the slum he's been hiding in. If he's going to be paying that much for rent anyway, he might as well get an apartment actually worth paying for." "The fuck, Grillby?" Red bristled. "I'm sick of you coming in here every month and working the poker table like it's your second job." Grillby continued, casually and calmly, like he was discussing a stain on his shirt. "It's bad for business. Everyone knows you win more than you lose, and that's with me rigging your games." The reality of how he'd ended up here hit Red with a sudden, startling smack to his ego. "You rat bastard, you cheated!" "As have you. As have we all. Come get your things. And you too." Grillby's hard eyelights blazed down on Lust and Dance, who had been oddly quiet during the exchange. "See to it about pulling his shit together. God knows he won't do it for himself." Trembling with rage, Red couldn't bring himself to look at either of the others as he followed Grillby to the back. As soon as the door was closed, Red couldn't stop the indignant snarl from clawing its way out of him any longer. What the fuck was that? What the other fat McFucking hell was that, and what the hell gave you the idea you had any goddamn right to say that shit to my pet? It needed to be said. Grilby interrupted coolly, already opening the safe where Red's things had been locked away safely. His jacket, his phone, his smokes, his comfortable clothes that didn't make him feel like a dingus. If you really had a fucking problem with me playing your fucking tables, you could've just cut me off like you do the booze. Fuck knows you ain't had no issue doing it before. Because if I did not, you'd drink until you'd pass out on my counter, Grilby reminded him. At least if I cut you off, you had to go somewhere else, and then you thought twice before drinking yourself all the way into a hole. You're not dumb enough to do that where you don't know you're safe. Red snatched the bundle of things from the elemental, trembling with humiliated fury. Bullshit, that was fucking bullshit. I have my shit together, fuck you very much. Grilby just looked at him, stoic and unimpressed. They both knew why Red was the one wearing Boss's collar. They both knew Red had made a point of living separately from Boss out of pride, out of his desire to not hold his brother down any more than he had. Grilby had been one of his few trustworthy allies, his friend, through all of it, through his breakdown and his steady crawl back to something resembling functionality. He'd seen Red at his best, at his worst, and through it all, Grilby had never once coddled him or pitied him, giving him the dignity of demanding of Red the same he demanded of anyone else, sometimes more when he was feeling vindictive. So why now? Why this bullshit now? Red ended up being the one to break eye contact, snarling his distaste for the whole thing as he stomped to the bathroom to change back into his own clothes. He couldn't help the heaviness in his soul, a marrow-deep terror that everything was ruined. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, hit the like button to let me know and subscribe to see what I make next. Links in the description lead to the original fic posted on AO3, as well as my Patreon and Ko-fi. If you like my stuff, please consider supporting me. Every little bit helps. Lastly, if you have a request for a recording, whether a one-shot or a series, let me know in the comments. I also do commissions, details of which are on my Patreon. So keep in touch. Bye!